Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Perspectives Asia. My name is Tarun Nagesh. I'm Curatorial Manager of Asian and Pacific Art here at the Queensland Art Gallery and Gallery Modern Art. I'd like to take first moment just to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land which we gather here tonight, and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, particularly noting the peoples of the Yagara and Turrbal peoples. I'm going to very quickly hand over to Christoph from the Griffith Asia Institute to introduce our speaker tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And wow, what a turnout. It's great to see everyone here. It seems the defence crowd is very strong. Adam, you've done a fantastic job in rallying people. I think we didn't have so many people for a very long time. I don't think any time since COVID. So wonderful to see you all here. So my name is Christoph Wang. I'm the director of the Griffith Asia Institute, and it's really a pleasure to welcome you all to this, I think, what's promising to be a very, very interesting event, and we are very honored to host Major General retired Adam Findlay, a highly respected figure in the realm of defense and national security. Now, Adam, I think, for many of us, doesn't need introduction, and it's hard to do justice to give an introduction, but I'll try, for those who don't know him so well, to do my best to introduce him. Adam has been 37 years dedicated to the Australian Army. He rose to the rank of Major General. His extensive military career includes significant roles in campaigns across East Timor, Iraq, Afghanistan, where he commanded special operations and led critical reforms within the ADF. Notably, he commanded the Special Operations Joint Task Force during the liberation of Mosul in 2017. Now, in addition to his military achievements, Professor Findlay is the founding director, which is also here, of the Griffith University Defence Network, where he plays a vital role in linking academia with defence and security sectors to enhance Australia's national security capabilities. He is indeed an accomplished scholar, so we don't give out these roles easily at Griffith University. He holds a PhD in military history from the University of New South Wales, and he has studied at institutions like University of Oxford and Harvard University, alumnus, joint alumnus. Now, he has, of course, over his career, received numerous awards and honours, including being appointed to be an officer of the Order of Australia for his contributions to the Special Operations Command. He's also received international praise, including the French Medal of Chevalier de la Légion d'honneur and the US Legion of Merit. Now, I'm very much looking forward to tonight's discussion, where Adam will discuss the 2024 National Defence Strategy, assessing its implications for Australia and the region, and how Australia navigates what he describes as its most challenging strategic period since the Second World War. We'll dive into, I guess, the interesting dynamics, strategic competition between the US and China, and Australia's role in it, and an unfortunate or unprecedented military buildup in the Indo-Pacific, and also explore how the national strategy can potentially, ideally, safeguard Australia's national interests. Now, before we proceed, I would like to extend our gratitude to our hosts, as always, the Queensland Gallery of Modern Art, for providing us with this wonderful event space and for the wonderful wine, and this opportunity to engage in this wonderful dialogue. Now, please join me in welcoming Professor Adam Findlay to the stage. The floor is yours.
Right, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me back there?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Right, so this is a university lecture. We'll go for about 45 minutes. We'll have some questions answered. If any questions come to me, I'll put questions out to you. Feel free to take photos or take notes. I'll be here afterwards. I'd love to catch up with you with any kind of questions you may have. Now, a good university technique is the NDS fit for purpose. I'm not going to answer that question. I'll leave it to you smart people to make your own mind up, okay, during the course of this lecture. I'd like to also echo Christoph's points. Thank you for coming out on this bitter Queensland evening, okay? Your company is much appreciated. Now, because I'm military, I can't think without PowerPoint. So that's what we're going to talk about today. There's quite a few things to get through. But I want to give you a bit of context, and then we'll dive into the NDS, which is the National Defence Strategy. Okay? We'll look at the recent history so you get smart, what the threats are. Now, if you don't think China's a threat, this whole debate becomes quite moot. And then we'll talk about the rest of what we've got there and what the government is proposing to do about it. Right, a bit of background. There's two key documents, if you're really dull. Okay, the Defence White Paper 16, and then it had a companion document called the Integrated Investment Plan, the IOP. That's how you spend the money. And you have the Defence Strategic Update and the Force Structure Plan 2020, a document I was very heavily involved with prior to my time in the military. The Defence White Paper 16, okay, that was the Turnbull government and Maurice Payne was Defence Minister, and at that point Australia was still hedging. Is China a cuddly panda or is it a dragon? An opinion was out, and we thought what we could do is try to overcome China's authoritarian kind of bent by showing China the benefits of democracy. So we had a hedging bet in 2016, and they said that for 2035, no more than a remote prospect of military attack on other countries. That's what they said in 2016. And you'll see the IOP, which is the money, gave about $195 billion out to about 2026. That was the money that was put against the Defence White Paper 16. Now, things changed. So in 2020, the new Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, and Linda Reynolds put out a DSU, a Discrete Defence Strategic Update, which said actually things are looking worse than we thought they were in 2016. The dragon is ascendant and the panda is kind of starting to retreat a bit. And you can see that we've said major power competition is now the principal driver. And we're starting to see this coercive tactics below the threshold of armed conflict, which is termed grey zone. And I can talk about grey zone at length if you want to after this. And then we started, okay, in that case, we need to hold the adversary at risk, have fires, long-range strike, look at cyber became an issue in 2020, and denial systems. And the Australian Defence Force are told there's three ways to get after this. Shape the environment, deter aggression, and if required, respond with force. The shape, deter, respond was the mantra, and many of you in this room will be aware of that. Now, the Force Structure Plan basically re-spread the Vegemite, okay, from the IIP in 2016, and the government allocated $27 billion out to 2030, and they gave a couple of priorities. Prioritise the region. Let's get out of the Middle East. Let's get back into our region where the problems are. Make the ADF more self-reliant. Let's start taking this grey zone activity on, because it is present and dangerous. And let's enhance lethality for high-intensity operations, not what we've been doing in the Middle East against terrorists for the last 20 years. At the same time, the US is also thinking. And so the Biden government came out with the NSS in 2020, and the US really belled the cat here, and they said, look, the world is at an inflection point right now, okay? We now have an era of competition between democracies and autocracies. That's the new competition globally. And democratic principles, of which the US see itself as the torchbearer, are being threatened. And there's all the principles there you all know because you live in a liberal democracy. And it said, and name China, the People's, please come in. The People's Republic of China is the most consequential actor, and it said something really, really important. That the People's Republic of China is the pacing challenge. So it is the threat force that the US is going to measure itself against. And then it said a number of things about China. It is trying to get hegemony and displace the US as a regional power. China and Russia want to make the world consistent with their authoritarian model. And then it tells about China leveraging a whole bunch of things, all organs of state power, to reorder the Indo-Pacific to their advantage. So that was in 2022. Now, last month, they reckon things have changed so significantly that Congress ordered a commission on the National Defence Strategy. So the US thinking right now, as like last month, was the most serious and challenging circumstances since the World War II. China and Russia are actively undermining the US. China is outpacing. This is the first time the US have admitted that in some areas, China is leading them, particularly in some technologies for military. And without significant change, the balance will change. They're already negating the US in the Western Pacific. And China and Russia, because they're authoritarian, have a centralised government, they're very good at fusing all the organs of the state, okay, to coerce neighbours. And this is important for Australia. The good thing about democracies, it's very attractive. And democracies attract alliances and partnerships. And the US absolutely see that they cannot take on the autocracies of the world by themselves. They need like-minded partners like Australia. But it ends up saying that. The trends are getting worse and not better. China is starting to become ascendant. And the US influence in the global world order since World War II, that Australia has benefited significantly from, is starting to be challenged. And potentially is in decline. Okay, so if that's what the US think, what do the Chinese think? If I was going to borrow somebody else's word and paraphrase him, the Chinese strategy in a simple sentence is make China great again. And what they want to do is progressively radiate out Chinese prestige and power. And it's a two-step process as far as we can work. There's a regional component, that comes first, and that's what's playing out right now in front of our eyes, in places like the South China Sea. And then there's a global piece. Okay? And the narrative from China is, we are the natural hegemon in Asia. Like most people. The US is in decline, we are ascendant. And they would like the US to yield East Asia, withdraw gracefully, okay, and they want to promote their autocratic policies. Now, H.R. McMaster is a colleague of mine. You might have read his work. He's a very good military academic, a colleague of mine from Afghanistan. He kind of sums up very pithily like an American. What Russia and China are trying to do is collapse the international political, economic order and replace it with their new order. That's their game. That there won't be a globalised world, it'll be a bifurcated world. A world that has a democratic kind of leading countries and an autocratic bunch of countries. Now, interestingly, my students go, Adam, wow, I wish I knew what China was doing. You know what I say to them? Read what they say. Listen to what they say. And so the National Congress is a critical meeting every 5 years, and President Xi does a very significant speech, and it's like a report on the Chinese Communist Party. And it was called The Chinese Nation Stood Up, Grown Rich and Becoming Strong. But like a good military guy, he actually gives a timeline of what he wants. So the military out there is called, cold timings. And he says, in 2025, 2030, we want parity with the US. We want to keep purging the military to make sure their loyalty to the party is unquestioned. We want to modernise the PLA to a world-class standard. And in the first bound, modernise to win local wars. We take that to mean regional wars. 2020, 2035, much stronger, and a global leader in innovation and complete its military modernisation. And then 2049, which is centenary of their victory in the PRC, to have resolved the Taiwan question, whatever that means, as we said. Strong country with world-class forces, so we migrate from regional activities to international activities. Now, that picture is something I'll come back to. You may remember when the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, went to Taiwan in August of 2022. I contend that is the first time that we saw the Chinese playbook of how they're going to do Taiwan. If you remember, they encircled it completely with the Navy. They flew a lot of interdiction missions and basically looked at isolating Taiwan. It's a very interesting time and a good thing to study for those military people around us. Okay, so now he's made some major speeches again in March last year, so that's after the conference in October. He had 4 big speeches. I'm not going to let you read through it all, but they're the big bits he said. He lashed out at Western aggression, and he said the encirclement and suppression against us. And he called out the United States for the first time. So the first time Xi ever said the US is doing it was then. Okay? And he says again, world-class fighting force, key part of uniting Taiwan. And the reunification of Taiwan is important for the rejuvenation of China. He said that. They're all quotes. Okay? And then there's a whole bunch of stuff there. And there needs to be defence science technology industry that strengthens army and win wars. It came out of his mouth. And then, interestingly, also on the 11th of March, so that the National People's Congress is like a parliament. It's a bit of a rubber stamping kind of parliament, but it's still a parliament. And what they did is they endorsed Xi Jinping thought. We can talk about question and answers if you want to, but I've got people like Christoph who are much more across the details of that than I am. But it now puts Xi on a par with Mao. Because thought is now the principal ideology for China. And it says a lot of things, but in terms of national security, one pair of people, united one party, one ideology, and one leader. Now, this bullet point is really critical. Xi sees the state of China, the country of China, as subservient to the party. The state is the mechanism that discharges the policies of the party. Top world power mid-century, supremacy is the only way to realise China's dream, national rejuvenation by 2050 comes up again, and reunification of Taiwan. So this national rejuvenation and reunification of Taiwan are part and parcel now of official ideology, and you must subscribe to this. It's now mandated that Xi Jinping thought is the principal thought and philosophy for the country or the nation of China. And that's the picture there of the National People's Congress. Okay, and then his New Year's address on January this year, he said the reunification with Taiwan is inevitable. And then this is important. So when you distill this down, these are the priorities of the Chinese Communist Party. And right now, it's worth saying there's a very distinct difference. In Australia, the Australian Army belongs to the government of Australia. It's the Australian Army. It's your army, and the government of the day provides direction to the army because it's Australia's army. The People's Liberation Army is not that. The PLA is the army of the Chinese Communist Party. That's clear. You understand the distinction there. We've now heard that the state is an implementer of party's policies, and the PLA is the army of the Chinese Communist Party, not of China. So their priorities are pretty important. Maintaining party leadership. Like any good political party, the leadership is important of the country. The first thing I do is centralise the core heartland, okay, the predominant ethno-Chinese group. The stability of the ethno-religious borderlands, particularly out west with the Uyghurs. The land borders, of which it has problematic relations with a number of countries and its coastlines. But the first time that China then looks external to the country of China is Taiwan. I says it again, one family bound by blood, unshakable commitment, reunification, and then recently, from about 2 years ago, we never promised to renounce use of force. Up until about 2 years ago, it was peaceful unification. Now we won't renounce use of force. And whilst Xi hasn't said this, US intelligence is now reporting this openly. So the commander of US Indo-Pacific, who we'll talk about in a minute, he has ordered the PLA to be capable of invading Taiwan in 2027, and the US is taking that very, very seriously. Okay, and then coming down, those 8 maritime neighbours, that's Chinese, that's the South China Sea. And then if you weren't aware of what's called the String of Pearls, the PLA Navy, the People's Liberation Army Navy, it's a bit mouthful, but it's the Navy, they have now got a range of international ports across the world, if you're not tracking. Okay, as part of the global kind of expansion. Djibouti, of course, is a big one. A number of us in the military here have probably been in Djibouti, seeing the China is there. Cambodia, of course, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Guyana, Pakistan, Tanzania, and UAE. It's a little bit opaque. We think there is a Chinese port in the UAE. Now, look at the picture. Hands up if you've heard about the 9-dash line. 9-dash line? Well, you're all out of date. Because now it's the 10-dash line. And that little circle just to the east of Taiwan is the 10th dash. And it was unveiled in ASEAN Summit by Premier League in September of last year. Various countries objected, but right now that has been called the standard map. So it's now the 10-dash line. Okay, let's have a look at defence spending now. It's a very busy slide, but there's a lot of comparisons in there. I'll say at the outset, the Chinese, how much they spend on the defence is opaque. So in 2023, they said they spent 1.55 trillion yuan, which that's what it equates to US $1 million. The recognised authority on Chinese military spending is the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. They reckon it's about 286. Okay. In 2023, US Defence Authorisation Act, which is their defence budget, just under $1 trillion, about 3.4% of GDP. Our Australian budget in May 23, which we'll talk about later on, comes in at $49 billion and is 1.9% of Australian GDP. That was 2023. And that's important because we'll be talking about the DSR shortly, and that was the budget that immediately followed the DSR. This year, they announced just a little bit of increase, 1.6 trillion, but now Indo-Pacific have weighed in and they said, no way is that accurate. And so, Admiral Paparo, who's the commander of Indo-Pacific, on record saying, I think it's 3 times as much, which puts it about the 700 billion mark. So if we go across the big graph on this side here, which is taken from The Economist, you'll see this left-hand side, that China red line is actually way under what we think is reality. And then you can see now what else is there. The US defence authorisations come in at 3% of GDP, and that's the main budget we just had from the Treasurer. Okay, so 2.2%, 2.02%. So that's the comparison scale of spending, as far as we best guess. In terms of nuclear warheads, okay, China is now on an expansion program from just about 400 in 2023, and they're aiming for, okay, 1,500 by next year. The Americans still have a large preponderance of nuclear weapons, as you can see. They're just under 4,000 because of the SOC talks. But this is the worry. The growth of the Navy. So right now, They're going from 66 to 79 submarines, of which 10 are going to be nuclear ballistic missile submarines. They're going to 440 warships by 2030, and they're going to increase from 3 carriers to 6 carriers by 2035. So the PLAN is on a rapid expansion. Okay, that's helped because Chinese shipbuilding is the most dominant shipbuilding in the world, and unlike Western countries, the Chinese shipbuilders build both commercial ships and warships. So they can ramp up production. So the Chinese State Shipping Corporation, okay, is building an aircraft carrier. We've got a 4th aircraft carrier coming down the pike, okay, and the world's largest amphibious ship, the Yunnan, will be ready next year. So they are pumping these big capital ships out of their shipyards at a rapid rate. Okay, one of the things that is concerning is to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the PLAN in April last year, they launched the JL2 with an 8,000 kilometre range so it can touch large parts of Australia from a submarine, which means they've got a second strike capability, which is significant, okay, in nuclear doctrine. So, where's our great guarantor going? Here, the US Navy. Okay, they've got 71 nuclear submarines, 14 ballistic, 4 guided missile ones. But from just about after the Vietnam War, the US Navy has gone from 792 capital ships to 291 to 290. You're going to build to 355, a little bit more at 52, 11 carriers, but the latest estimates out of the US Navy, I think they need about 500. And just for good measure, what's Australia doing? Okay, we currently have 38 ships, and with a surface fleet review that's just been landed, we're going to reduce size to 26. Okay? And that's all what they've all done. So that's the nature of the arms race, and that's why that graph on the top right-hand side shows you the massive escalation in Chinese surface fleet. Right. So, with the new government, Prime Minister Albanese commissioned a number of people. Sir Angus Houston, former CBF Air Force officer. Stephen Smith, former Defence Minister, famous for being a minister, okay, in 2013, who had the lowest defence spend since 1938. Okay, Peter Dean, who's a professor in Sydney, and a fellow called Richard Bagg, who's an army officer. And the DSR was can you please rapidly review that problem set? Can you come up with some recommendations for what we need to do? So they went away and came back with a pretty good report that was issued on the 24th of April last year. And it said a number of things. It was the most ambitious review. It wasn't. When you read it, it kind of reads the same trajectory. You can read the trajectory from Defence White Paper 16 right through. It's not particularly ambitious. Okay? It has, so the document you can see is the unclassified version. The classified version is very, very tight holding camera. Okay? So in the unclassified version, there's 962 recommendations. You can read them, it's online. And the classified version is 108. But it stressed a number of things. Sense of urgency. We've got a real problem on our hands. Okay. And it made a really big call. It said we need to go for strategy of denial. Not shake to respond anymore. It's denial. And we're going to put all our chips on red. We're going to go from a balanced force, an ADF that has a range of contingencies for a range of different capabilities, to a focused force. So we made the assessment that we can change the structure of the ADF now from a balanced force to a focused force. There are significant personnel challenges, and I'll touch on that shortly. And then the US alliance. Just like the Americans, we realise that the US alliance is going to be critical to us. I'd say right now it's existential, and you'll see why. But despite everything that you've been briefed about China, despite the sense of urgency, despite the cataclysmic conditions worse since World War II, we all watched budget night. This is in April, and budget night in May comes up and goes, right, what's going to happen? The government going to put money there? Do you know how much money, extra money was spent on defence in the May budget? That much. 0. No more extra money. So the government talked this, the sky is falling in, but when it came to real government commitment, there was no money. Now what you did have, as the Treasurer had said, okay, we've got $42 billion funding increase over the next decade. Let's just peel that one back. No. $42 billion came from internal cross-levelling. So there's no more money went to defence. But what happened was they shifted $42 million across defence. What they did is they said, $7.9 billion to grow ASD, the Australian Signal Authority, $32 billion for GEO, 1.9 for ASCA, or Pillar 2, and unbeknownst to the Australian public, the Ukrainian war effort was funded out of Australian defence baseline. So, that's interesting.
Sorry, I don't understand. What does that mean?
It means the government have talked a really big problem and a threat to Australia and deteriorating geopolitical circumstances. And when it came to commitment from the government, they put no money to it. So how important is it?
So what does that baseline comment mean in terms of Ukrainian?
What it means is, okay, so the Ukrainian, what that means is that the Australian government was very, very generous in funding the Ukrainian war effort. As by the way, I think we should as a democratic country. There's nothing, I don't disagree with that in any way. The point is, government didn't find any more money. They just said to defence, you suck it up. Give us $650 billion, $6 million. So that meant the defence had even less money. Okay?
Thank you.
Right. Okay. So, is this just defence people getting all kind of worried? Now, let's see what Mike Burgess says. Okay? And he is a DG of Asia. And he went with his Five Eyes mates to Stanford in the end of October 23, and he was quite clear. The Chinese government engaged in the most sustained, scaled, sophisticated theft of IP in history. Now, I haven't known Mike Burgess. He's not a guy given a hyper role. Right? And he said that in a Five Eyes conference, open source, that's his Five Eyes mates over there on the right-hand side. That's interesting. And then, in February this year, he said, more Australians being targeted for espionage and foreign interference than ever before. Right? And the top collection of capabilities against Australia are defence capabilities. And then at the Defence Forum in May, in case you missed it, a former Chinese spy said, uncorroborated of course, it's interesting to say that there's more than 1,200 Chinese spies in Australia. So unprompted, he said that. Now it's got to be tested, but that's interesting to say out of the blue. And then of course we had earlier this month the raising of our threat to Australia to probable, which means the risk of attack is greater than 50%. And what he said was, politically motivated violence now joins espionage and foreign interference as our principal security concerns. So that's what the DG of Asia is saying, and he's got no particular barrow to push when it comes to defence funding. And that's what Australians think. So what you have is a nice snapshot of what it was 10 years ago. Okay? So about 60% of Australians think there could be conflict with China in the next 20 years. Interestingly, that's double what it was 10 years ago. Right, trade and investment. This is the problem. During Cold War I, against Russia, the Soviet Union it was then, we weren't linked economically. This is the problem now. So our biggest foreign espionage threat, our biggest threat to security, is also our biggest trading partner by a long way. There's a lot of figures in there to show you just how enmeshed Australia is with the Chinese economy. 27% of our global trade is with China. And you can see it's a #1 two-way trade. The kind of money is huge. It's increasing. So even despite the sanctions being put on Australian trade for lobsters and wine and all the other stuff that came through, we still increased our exports to China. So despite being demarched. So we are completely enmeshed in the Chinese economic system. Now the FDI, Foreign Investment Australia, is about 10. How does that compare to the US? Our security partner, it's our third largest behind Japan, okay? And it's about 8%, okay? So it's a third of what we do with China. But by far, and it's a country mile second, it's the biggest foreign direct investor in Australia, and we are the biggest, Australian money is the biggest investment in the US. So we are enmeshed very closely with our direct investments into Australia and out of Australia by the US. And if you're interested, slide 1 is our knife. Well, they're the numbers there, and it makes it very difficult for the government to then thread the needle between a security threat and our economic survival. That brings us to the topic of tonight. We finally got there, guys. 2024 National Defence Strategy. And it said, okay, we've got the DSR now. The DSR has given us 108 recommendations. We're now going to make it into government policy. And this is obviously the unclassified version. There is a classified. Yeah, fundamental new approach to Defence Australia. It's significant and urgent and required. We're going to a focused force, not a balanced force. It's the most challenging strategic environment from the Second World War. It's in the document. Strategic competition, unprecedented military build-up, and there's a whole bunch of other compounding security risks. That's what it says. And now it comes up with the strategy of denial. This is the new mantra, the denial. Well, integrating the 5 warfighting domains, maritime, land, air, space and cyber, they're the 5 domains. We need to integrate them, and we're going to shift from a balanced force that can do a range of contingencies to a focused force against Australia's most significant strategic threats, which is unsurprisingly Chinese maritime expansion in Northeast Asia and Taiwan sitting front and centre. As a consequence, the IIP, the Integrated Investment Programme, which is the money that goes with the program, had to be completely rebuilt. And it said Australian Defence Force needs to do 5 things. So defend Australia and our immediate region, deter through denial to project force against Australia, which has been short to archipelagic deterrence. That's the new kind of doctrine now, archipelagic deterrence, to stop the Chinese coming through the Southeast Asian archipelago. Protect our economic connections to the region, contribute to partners, okay, and then global, regional, and then global, which has always been a throwaway line for Australian Defence Force. That's why we appear all over the world supporting our allies. Right, so just like in 2023, how serious is this problem, Mr Albanese, Mr Chalmers? Let's have a good look at the Australian budget. Okay, we've just had, it's urgent, it's the biggest change, it's the biggest change since World War II. Right, so in the budget, government outlays about $750 billion, right? Defence outlays are sitting at 6.5%. Now, I don't begrudge social security, health, education. I think they're vital in Liberal democracy. But it shows you the relative weighting for government expenditure. Now, in the forward estimates, now, anybody who deals with government knows that, yes, the IIP goes out for 10 years, but it's a forward estimates where you've got to put high-grain money to your problem. So what we're going to have is, for this year, 2% GDP, next year, 2.4% GDP, 2.01, and then 2.12 after the next election or 2. Now this is really interesting. The Albanese government has invested an additional $5.7 billion over the next 4 years to 2028. Break that. thanks to Marcus Hellier, who's broken this down in more detail, this is what this line is, $5.7 billion over forward estimates. Interestingly, 3.8, well, the bulk of it, doesn't appear until 2027, after the next election or two. So they've talked up the amount of money they're putting to it, but it's now money in the Netherlands. Now, the bulk of the $330 billion that's been allocated with the National Defence Strategy appears in the defence budgets beyond 2028. The same trick. So they've loaded up all the money into other people's areas. And that includes the cost of the nuclear submarine program, which is that at the moment. The total defence budget up until that point will be about 2.3% of GDP. So at its highest point, the defence budget will be 2.3% of GDP. And just to show you what the skewing has done as a consequence, because of the upgrading of our surface and subsurface fleet, the maritime investment, so $330 billion. 4 years ago, Navy got 28% of the budget for modernisation. They've now got 38%. So Navy's now got a really big lion's share of the modernisation capability plan to modernise. Land have got 16, I'll come back to land. Air's not much change, and then the other ones have got some small numbers. The point is that the $330 billion to build the fleet we need to do a strategy of denial, then a shed load of money. And that's been borne out in 38% of $330 billion is going to Navy. This little diagram here on the top, it breaks it down, but the point to note is the top two right-hand numbers, 17 and 16%, so 33%, that's just on two naval capabilities. Okay, I'll just address this one because this is a real problem. No way out of it. A very good friend of mine, Lieutenant General Natasha Fox, who's running defence personnel, she's trying to work this problem set. And we can talk about what we think afterwards if you want to. But right now, by middle of next year, we need that many people. Right now, we're tracking that many people. And right now, we're going to be 5,000 people short of the ADF. We're small enough as it is. There's 5,000 people. The cynic in me says the government doesn't mind so much because if we haven't got 5,000 people, that's 5,000 salaries in active defence. Okay? But the thing about it is, right now, the ADF is going backwards in recruitment, and it's also going backwards in retention. And there's massive growth. Australian Submarine Agency, Australian Signals Directorate, and a whole bunch of their capability space is growing like topsy, at the same time we can't get people in the door. Right. So this is the question. Is it a strategy-led or a budget-defined focus force? So let's have a look. Let's just recap what President Xi said. In 2035, he said he wants military capability parity with the US. And he said the PLA should be capable of invading Taiwan in 2027. Now that's the timeline that's been set down by the pacing threat. Okay, military capability priorities. Undersea warfare. Again, Marcus Hellier has a great article, if you want to read it, called The Submarines That Ate the ADF. 10% of the entire defence budget to 2034 will be spent on submarines, and if it goes really well, with a following sea and a tailwind, our first nuclear submarine will get here in 2034. So just put that against Xi's timeline again. So, first of all, I support nuclear submarines, don't get me wrong. They are an awesome piece of kit. They're really good. But the timeline doesn't fit. Long-range precision strikes, cyber, and a few we'll talk about in a minute, air power, they're the things that the ADF has to get after with no more money. So now we've got no more money, the budget becomes a zero-sum game. And this is where it becomes very, very difficult. Because how do you introduce new capabilities with no money? You've got to make some decisions and get rid of some capabilities. And the government has done that. And the major capability they've got rid of is land close combat. I'm not saying that because I'm an army guy. I think all 5 domains are equally important. But what we've got rid of is our ability to fight on land. Now the problem is that most humans, last time I checked, lived on land. And warfare is a human activity. And what land brings to you is it's the only fighting domain that can seize and hold ground. You can fly, you can cyber, you can space people to death, but until you're a soldier standing there with a rifle in his hand, you're not owning that territory. And the other thing that soldiers are good at, because they're humans, is they work among populations. We're not flying over them, we're not sailing under them, they're actually with populations. Now, you go, okay, well, hold your jets there, Adam, land boy. 2020 FSP gave the Army $55 billion over 10 years. And the IOP for 2024 gave land capabilities $53 billion. It's about the same, isn't it? No, because there's this new thing called Land 8710. And that's where Army is going to get all its new ships, littoral manoeuvre vessels. And so they had to find $17 billion to build these vessels at Henderson shipyards in Western Australia. And where did it come from? That's $53 billion. How did they then get the money to pay for this new bit of kit that I think is there's logical argument there? With no money. We will cut back the fighting vehicles. If you're not aware of it, Army has been fighting for a new infantry fighting vehicle since 1960. Say that again, since 1960. The current armed vehicles in Australia are technically vintage cars. They're M113. Okay, we couldn't take Afghanistan because we weren't protected enough. So since 1960, we've tried to get new ones. Finally, go and say, get 450 IFVs, infantry fighting vehicles, $27 billion. They said, nah. Cut the training. So now the Army has gone from a capability that would have had a mechanised brigade, a serious war-fighting statement, to a mechanised battalion, a third the size. And the other thing, of course, is protecting mobile fires. One lesson out of Ukraine is, as soon as you fire your artillery piece, you want to get out of the way quickly because the Russian artillery is going to come in on your head. It's called counter-battery fire. The best way to counter battery fire is have mobile fires, so shoot and scoot. What have we done? We've got rid of that. Okay, so that's what's happened to the defence budget to make money for all the other expansions. Right. So how's Australia going to get out of its bind? No more money, all these problems, and denuding themselves because nothing's come online until 2030s. Well, mate Peter Jennings sums it up quite cynically in Australia. We're going to rely on the old Australian methodology of alliance rent-seeking. So the Osmond talks that occurred earlier this month, where Australia put its hand out and said, we're buggered. America, can you help us? And they're going to. There's going to be increased US presence. Paul Kenny paints this. Expanding all the footprint and increasing defence industry collaboration. Okay, but basically what's happening is the US military is now putting people into Australia at an unprecedented rate since World War II and building our bases for us. That's how we're getting through this bind right now. I don't know how you feel sovereignty-wise, but you know, it makes you highly dependent. And we've already seen the Trump movie before. So if all things go bad for colour and Trump gets back in November, do you remember what he said to NATO in 2016? Pay away. Who thinks that's paying away? Okay. Fingers crossed. Come on, gets in. Okay. So, okay. Now, this is the reason you have balanced forces and not focused forces. So my mate H.R. McMaster again. What is certain about the future, even the best efforts will prove erroneous. In our 2,000 years of warfare, we really haven't predicted the next conflict. Okay, hands up who on the 10th of September 2021, who all like this, thought that terrorists would fly 2 aircraft into the Twin Towers in Lower Manhattan. 2001, sorry. 2001. No, one thing, I didn't. No one took me, didn't. 2001, probably was first. Interestingly, to prove the point, the US National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, said, coming back from the Middle East, the Middle East region is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades. The date, 29 September 2023. 8 days later was the 7th of October, and you had Hamas invade southern Israel. So we've never ever been really good at predicting the next conflict. So good armies, good militaries build themselves to accept the reality that you can't cover all bases. What you must be able to do is have sufficient capacity, sufficient capability to withstand the first strategic shock of these 2 aircraft flying into the towers, work with what you've got, and then have, within 1 month, Australian and US Special Forces on the ground in Afghanistan. So the balanced force is able to respond to a range of contingencies. That's what a balanced force does. It's wide, but it has contingencies to get over this, to buy time, to rapidly retool and take on the task at hand. But we've got a focused force that's against the most significant threat, which you'd think would make sense if that most significant threat of Chinese radiating out their maritime hard power sense from China, Southern Command, Eastern Command, through Taiwan into the outpost region. That's what we're betting on. We're betting the house on red. And that's the most dangerous threat. So now, focus the ADF very, very quickly on the archipelagic deterrence. But if you're a focused force, by definition, you're not focused on other things. What if China chooses not to fight this way? We've just bet the house that it's going to do this thing in a maritime domain, and Sun Tzu has been telling Chinese generals for 2.5 millennia now that because we've got a focused force, our patient threat knows we're a focused force. He knows the US, you're a pretty balanced force actually. Avoid strength, attack, weakness, strike, the enemy is most vulnerable. There's 5 warfighting domains, and what are you seeing? Well, the first question is, are we actually in the war? Are we actually not? We're not post-war, are we pre? Because if you look at Cold War I, communism versus capitalism, just think back the old people in the room. Okay, World War II, the Soviet Union, NATO tooled up. Cold War I was about preventing conflict in Eastern Europe. Remember that? Article 5, NATO. Where did Cold War I end up being? Not in Eastern Europe. It was in Korea. It was in Africa, Mozambique, Angola, Afghanistan. It was in Malaya. We were there. We were in Vietnam. We were there. So everybody getting tooled up for Eastern Europe operations against the Soviet Union. The war did not work out like that. A focused force in Eastern Europe had to retool to be a balanced force to get over all those fights that are there. Now, are we in Cold War II? You can argue yes or no. If the Chinese know what our focused forces are, will the second Cold War go the way of the first in that we'll fight it by proxy? I think we're seeing it in Ukraine. I think we're seeing it in Gaza. the proxy being Iran. We're seeing it in Myanmar. And we already have an indication of how the PLA will fight. The Pelosi visit and the current activities in South China Sea, you're seeing China already doing this. They're doing, with the isolation of Taiwan, cyber. They've got the infrastructure, bank systems, undersea cables, and play with them and shut them off. Cognitive warfare, particularly during the election of President Lai in January this year, they had cognitive warfare to undermine the democracy in Taiwan. And they denied the Chinese space-based technologies. And now the activities in South China Sea every day. China has rejected the 2016 ruling that says its claims in South China Sea, the 10-dash line, is illegal. They ignored that. And you're seeing the use of coast guards, fishing vessels, and most recently scientific research vessels working for the PLAN, okay, through a proxy code. And every day, read the Scarborough Shoals of the Philippines. See how the Philippines have struggled to resupply their ship, okay, on the second Thomas Shoal. We're starting to see it's already happening. We're seeing how this is playing out. And there's no great armadas emanating out from the southern shore of China. And then there's other things that should worry us. China's a player in some of our closest neighbours. PNG, they've tried to court PNG. What happens if they foment trouble in PNG? It's a tinderbox and civil war breaks out. We're going to find ourselves in PNG. The thing that really worries me is the vote for autonomy in Bougainville, which has been rejected by the PNG Parliament. But the secessionist movement in Bougainville is very strong, and it is right for the Chinese to underwrite the secession of Bougainville and, at the same time, provide a naval base close to Australia. And then the Solomon Islands, we've been in there with Prime Minister Salvare many times there. We've seen the Chinese really try to get a base in the Solomon Islands. So these are things. Now, Bougainville or Solomon Islands and PNG, I love nuclear submarines. Love them. Not much good. You're working with people. You're working with land combat. Oh, we haven't got that. And then one thing I don't know, I'm going to touch on this thing. People say Australia's got no borders. Well, aren't you lucky being an island continent? We do have borders. In Antarctica. Australia is responsible for just under 50% of Antarctica. And that map shows you that in the Australian sector of Antarctica, there is 3 Chinese scientific bases. And whilst polar ice cap melting is important research, what's even more important about Antarctica is for low Earth orbit satellites on a polar orbit. Very useful for satellite technology. So, conclusions. Thank you for staying with me so long. I hope you made your mind. Right. So, my friend Anna Duncan, we're in long-term competition. And she says from her Cyber Command ivory tower, she's very good. They're not sideshows in Ukraine and Taiwan. They are early test cases. Yes, back to my original question, are we actually in a war run? We're in a pre-war. Well, what are we? What are we here? This is the summary. Right now, the post-World War II global order, led by the US, which has been of enormous benefit to Australia, is now being directly challenged by authoritarian states. Unquestioned. The NDS continues a long line of Australian strategic assessments that have adjusted to our strategic circumstances, probably since Defence Wipeout of 16. The ADF personnel crisis is existential. If we don't solve that, we've got no people. And whilst the NDS is sound in a way, the IIP is utterly underfunded. And any funding increase has been kicked by the government to outside the 4 decimals, to never narrow in. Because of the zero-sum game, we've adjusted our force structure. We're now entirely reliant on the US bases now to underwrite our short-form capabilities. We have restructured the ADF for a singular contingency to counter Chinese maritime scenarios. We do not have sufficient land combat. We have reduction beyond the season hold terrain. And we've now made the ADF less capable to respond to a broad range of contingencies because of the restructure of our ADF. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my brief. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Adam. Anybody selling buttons? Chocolate tight. I think we just discussed whether you're willing to stay 15 minutes longer.
Yeah, of course.
Questions. Yep. So we'll open the floor to questions, and we take 2 or 3 questions together, so you can focus your answers.
Thanks a lot for that. It was really interesting. Yeah, we've scared quite great stocks tomorrow, so that's my first call. But I'm interested in Antarctica.
Yeah.
It's like, temperature 1%. Why they're trying to make some money on one thing they have Antarctica. Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Second question, David.
Yes, David Sanger on Radio Night on the weekend talked about the submarines.
Yep.
And he says that what's the new technology in submarines is drone submarines, which would be a far cheaper and more effective way to do things than have manned submarines.
Yep.
Okay. Third question. Yeah.
What's wrong?
So
What's wrong with Trump taking us and making allies spend more on defence? Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah.
all right. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that one. Okay, that's easy. No, I agree. But the point is, Trump is transactional. And whereas you had Biden, where you love him or hate him, had a more international approach. And the thing is that he could play to more of the broader concept of alliance, longer-term relationship. Trump's quite transactional. I think if he sees this, he's going to go, hang on. Why don't you stump me? I said, sorry. Yep.
So you want to?
Yeah, look, okay, Antarctica. I'm not an Antarctic expert. There's only 3 on Australian bases. There is an Antarctic treaty. All countries are signatory to it. And for scientific research, it's under the guise of legitimate scientific research, the Chinese have opened their bases up there in a much more permissive time pre-2016, where we thought China was a more cooperative member of the international community. Cynically, there now is a big thought about China becoming a polar power as well, not just in the south, but also in the north. Okay, because it was obviously in cahoots with Russians as well. So that's how it's happened. There's also heard Macquarie Island, so there's no mention of our southern territories. Our singular approach is on the archipelagic region to our north, and nothing to our south, west, or east.
So we can't push those on these Atlantic.
No.
Our territory.
No.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry, a question. Okay. So right now, there's a big change in thoughts of warfare that Ukraine being in. We're not quite there ready for complete unmanned systems with autonomy. We still demand that any application of lethal force occurs through a human decision maker, first thing. But what's happening now, for those of you who remember the old days of military doctrine where you had what was called the F echelon, the front echelon, they had the 4 ends of battle troops, battle area, F FDEBA, the F echelon, the administrative A echelon, and the B echelon. It was the division in battle, from the 4 ends of battle right through. This F echelon, which was where troops would encounter each other for the first time in contact, has now been redrawn. There's now a robotics and autonomous systems F echelon. So the first thing that hit each other are robotic systems, both reconnaissance, ISR, and lethal systems. And then it gets back to humans. That plays out in the sea as well. So right now you see Andril with Ghost Shark. What the step change will be, like you have with Ghost Bat with the aircraft, so basically an F-35 would fly with 2 Ghost Bats as part of its package. So its frontage, its payload, everything's increased, but the F-35 is then controlling those autonomous systems. Same thing with submarines. So nuclear submarines will have autonomous systems that will go with it, will loiter, or will pick up and change. So it hasn't gone fully autonomous, but the trajectory is certainly there. If you want to talk about robotic autonomous systems, I saw Warwick Penrose in there. We can talk at length about what he's doing at EBE with the robotic systems. That's that.
Okay.
So, I saw Michael.
We have you first lady. So
Oh, okay. Look, I was really interested in listening to what you had to say, and
Yep.
I've been, for the last 12 months, been pushing an 80th commemoration of the World War II takeover of the Gatton campus as a hospital.
Yep.
Less than a month after the fall of Singapore, 80,000 surrendered to 30,000 Japanese.
Yes.
The bombing of Darwin,
Yep.
17 times, and Broome, and then within less than a month, the 153rd Station Hospital moving into the Gatton campus
Yeah.
under the orders of General MacArthur, who was sent over to take over the military security of Australia.
Yep.
I have been pushing, so on this coming Thursday, there will be a commemoration recognising
Yep.
3,000 US medical military Harvard-trained doctors in a tent city for 2 years, treating upwards of 19,000 patients during that period. Hardly known, there is a reunion of the CMF under General Brigadier Chris Hamilton, so there'll be a number of military personnel on the campus. Try, to remember, to recognise just how serious this is when you are under attack, with the vulnerability.
That's all. I'll take a statement, okay, Gatton campus, everybody.
I know, I just
But the
wanted
thing
to
about it is,
share
though,
that with you.
it's one of these issues, I think, without getting into too much recruitment attention, that our kind of World War II history, when we faced our last existential threat with Japanese offensive invasion, has completely gone from our consciousness now. And the other thing that's happened in Australian society is that in the wars since then, the wars of World War II, essentially what Australian society has done is subcontracted those wars out to the Army, Navy, Air Force. Like, Australia didn't buy into Afghanistan, Iraq as a country. We were very sad when people were killed, but that was something the Army did. Vietnam was the same, and so was Malaya. So I agree that there's a military history component. It's not particularly sexy at the moment, but I think that sacrifice absolutely is worth remembering and commemorating. Absolutely.
let's kind of also get some diverse views. Yes, please.
We never took the ARH to the sandpit because we didn't have
Yep.
the snares, we
Yep.
didn't have the hydras.
Yep.
So should Australia really be looking at more what it can do indigenously rather than also trying to rely on our overseas partners?
Okay.
Especially the procurement part,
Yep.
but also just in having a defence capability like that.
Yep. Absolutely. Please. I'll comment on. Don.
In relation to the reunification of China and particularly Taiwan,
Yep.
is there anything that we can learn from the Hong Kong experience?
Yes. Yep.
This,
So, sorry, Phil.
I want to get you.
Thank you for making your use of such a deeply belligerent Australian foreign policy very clear to all of us.
Yep.
I am, of course, as you can tell by the tone of my voice, so disturbed at the belligerent nature of all of this.
Yep.
Yeah, at the start when you said, do we consider China as a cuddle panda or a dragon or
Yep.
whatever? Perhaps that's the core of the problem. Because China is neither such a binary, sets up a distortion. You've made it so patently clear. China is Australia's #1 trade partner.
Yep.
And therein is the core vulnerability. And every decision that's made about Australia's relationship with, rather than defence from China, must surely be rooted in that understanding, I would think. Thank you.
Oh, well, I'll start again. Thanks for getting back to you in a minute. Yeah, that's right. There was an engagement by liberal democracies, Deng Xiaoping, for example, the liberalisation of China, and fantastic growth of China. The issues you're dealing with is China, this China's Communist Party. Xi has been utterly unequivocal about his growth to make China great again. He is completely making himself a autocrat. He's a dictator for life, and he has a belligerent policy. Now you've got a choice, and like a lot of people in this room, I've been in a number of wars, and as a Western liberal democratic person, I would like to negotiate this out. I would like to say let's do some accommodation. But there's no accommodation, and right now the accommodation is around the democratic people who vote to be a democratic country in Taiwan. And Gia said that is ours. It's not. It hasn't been Chinese today, we're only 5. But the point is, so what do? You're an autocrat. The whole lesson of the 20th century is autocrats. Hitler, Sudetenland, didn't go very well. Stalin, Mao, we've seen them before. Here's another one. And that's the problem. Would I like to avoid a war and be best friends with China? Of course I would. But are we going to sell out our liberal democratic values to do that? Are we going to sell out the people of Taiwan? Are we going to sell out our ASEAN neighbours in the South China Sea and give that to China? I mean, come on. I would like that like you. I just don't see that reality. So that's my view. Yes. And I regret, as a retired military guy, I can't go to China and enjoy their culture and their history and their profound impact on the world. But I'm not putting up with another authoritarian figure like we had in the 20th century. And we've got another one. And Putin. No limits partnership. Sorry, that's all. I'll talk to you after this red wine. Sorry about being very shouty.
Sorry,
yeah.
Didn't we sell out to Stalin after World War II? We placated him. We let him have the Baltic states and... it's a balance, isn't it? I'm not suggesting we give up fighting. I'm just saying...
Yeah, look, I'm not going to get into Truman and Churchill and the Yalta Conference and all that kind of stuff with the classification of how we get accommodated Soviets. But the point is, there's reality and what we like to have. And sometimes reality isn't what we want to have. Okay, Kaz G. Someone had a quick question.
I think maybe last question.
Okay, so defence procurement.
We also have. Okay. You said kind of there's a timeline.
Sorry, Mike. Kaz G, man, I'll come talk to you about ARH. I'm still going to start a tissue on that one too. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Adam. Compelling and provocative and fascinating, brilliant. My question is, if you think there is an apathy in Australian society, and if you think there is a apathy in the liberal democracies of the UK, perhaps the US, what can we do about it? And in a nutshell, and part two, if I can.
Oh, part two.
Part two. Part two.
Something. My lord, the first question. What's that?
Presuming you're dealing with smart people in Canberra, the cabinet, Prime Minister, all the smart advisors that advise them. How do you reconcile the disconnect between investment and the gravity of the geopolitical landscape?
I'll talk. The first one is just
the nutshell answer.
The second thing, I don't know. I think it's an interesting dynamic with the way that Richard Marles, who's the Defence Minister, hasn't been called Defence Minister, he's been called the Deputy Prime Minister. You have the promotion of Senator Conroy as the defence industry guy. I think the Labor government has traditionally underfunded defence. I'm not saying there's a partisan thing. I think you really see the evidence of that out. Not that I thought that the previous Liberal government did much to actually, they had the money but didn't actually get things going. So what I think, the hypocrisy of this is quite clear. That you talk a bad game, you don't fund it. But the problem is in Australia, there's no national discourse. There's no national security fraternity. There's no people who are doing things like the advocates for the NDIS and the advocates for government investment in education, and all the other kind of things that government has to cater with. I just think there's been a silent, and as Peter Jennings said, there's been acquiescent bipartisanship for generations, and the government hasn't been challenged on it, and it needs to be. So that's how I'd answer that question.
Sure. I know there are lots of more questions. Unfortunately, we'll have to close this really interesting discussion. Thank you so much for giving us a global view on this. I hope there are many other really full think about the person like you and who can afford this has a very clear mind. I think needs a very clear mind. Really, the things are much more complex than I think you have to probably see them. And I'd be curious what if a Chinese person, a Chinese military expert would hear that, what would this person think, and what's actually the flip side of this is in a context situation that's also. So thank you so much for sharing this. Thank you so much for giving us your precious insights. And I have the privilege to go with you to do that. So I have a question to you. Thank you everybody for coming. One more thing, we have another seminar coming up. Xi Jinping start next Wednesday at 4 p.m., 5 p.m. online. So you're all welcome to join that too. We have a high-level speaker there as well. It's going to be online. So getting more onto China's thoughts over the next coming weeks. Join us, and you can follow us on LinkedIn to learn more about this. Yeah, that's kind of the final words.
A very, very quick thank you from the gallery. Thank you all for coming. A very, very warm thank you for preparing tonight's lecture, for being very generous in fielding all of those questions. I think you could have spoken on any range of topics, but thank you for turning it to something very, very present. We've got some very small